All right. Well, it's been a couple weeks since we had this Proverbs class. We weren't here last week, but I'm just going to go backwards a little bit. Some of the last what we looked at was some, I guess, some really strong encouragement to Rehoboam, Solomon's son, to realize that he has a personal responsibility, and that's highlighted by how many yous and yours are in this paragraph. You need to do this, you need to do that, and that sort of thing. And so that's where we left off last. Well, we didn't leave off there actually. We got into these next couple of verses, which have two more of those yous and yours in there, and the overall context, right at this part of Proverbs, he's talking about sexual immorality, and he uses his son. I mean, he's encouraging his son. So he's using a woman, an immoral woman, as an example of stay away, stay away, stay away. But as I keep emphasizing, if he'd been writing to his daughter, he would have been saying the same exact things about a man, uh, trying to lure you away into immorality. And so it's not a sexist kind of thing where he's just hammering as if all women are immoral or inappropriate or whatever. That's not it at all. But there are those that are out there, and every Christian, everybody who wants to follow God, needs to avoid those who would try to draw you into immorality. And I think we got down to verse 28. But in verse 27, he says, "Can a man take fire into his bosom and his clothes not be burned?" Um, that's the source of the saying I heard all my life growing up. You play with fire, you're going to get burned, and that's the case. You start messing around with hints and innuendos, and batting the eyes and flirting and all that kind of stuff in an inappropriate way. You're playing with fire, and you're going to get burned. You can't take it into you and not be damaged by it. Verse 28, can one walk on hot coals and his feet not be seared? Answer me that question. Can you?
I can.
I don't know how to do it, but I know there are people that can do it, but it's a trick. It's not like you're just walking down on coals. Last week, I can't remember, it was Thursday, Wednesday or Tuesday, walked down the beach, and it was those rocks that are about this big, and just walking on those rocks for 2 miles. My feet were killing me by the time I got done. Of course, I didn't have the best of shoes on either, but if those were hot coals, I wouldn't even be here today. I would be resting in bed, not too comfortably. You can't walk on coals and your feet not be seared. And this is really just a metaphor, a way of saying you got to stay away from this kind of thing that we've been talking about, this immorality, and you can't walk in it and not expect to get burned. And then he says, "So is he who goes into his neighbor's wife." So here's the point. You can't walk on coals. You can't take fire into your bosom. And here's why I said that. It's because it's the same way if a man goes to his neighbor's wife. Whoever touches her shall not be innocent. And that word that's translated innocent means exempt from punishment. Doesn't mean just innocent as in the sense of not being guilty, but it's more the idea of being not punished for what you have done. You're not gonna be exempt from punishment if you get involved in sexual immorality. Not is even if you get away with it in this life, who else has got his eyes on you 100% of the time? God does. And he also, I mean, there were earthly laws against immorality, sexual immorality, the law of Moses, but there's a higher law than even the law of Moses. And that one you can't get away with no matter what. You can get away with it all your life, maybe, but when the day comes you stand before judgment, you're going to have to answer for it. So there's no getting away with being involved in sexual immorality. So he continues on in verse 30, and he puts something in here that doesn't seem to fit when you look at it in the first place, because he's right in the middle of talking about sexual immorality and adultery and such like. But in these couple of verses, he says, people do not despise the thief if he steals to satisfy himself when he's starving. Now, do we like it when a thief steals to satisfy himself when he's starving? No, we don't like it, but well, at least we can kind of understand, what would you do if you were starving to death and there was some food there that wasn't yours and you ate it? Yeah, is that right? No, it's not. It's not yours to eat, but we at least have some understanding. But even though we have a little bit of understanding about it, verse 31 says, yet when he's found, he must restore sevenfold. He may have to give up all his substance of his house. Whatever it takes for him to pay it back, he's got to pay it back. Yeah, we understand that he did it not maliciously or whatever. We kind of feel for him. Nonetheless, the law says you steal something, you pay it back sevenfold. Remember, we're talking under the law of Moses, and that's the way the law of Moses read. And so you might have compassion in your heart for somebody, but they still have to pay the price. Now, to get just a little sidetracked, we tend to overlook stuff, in our daily lives, overlooking stuff that we really shouldn't overlook. We go, well, we make excuses for people. Well, they did this or that, they blah blah. There's a million of them out there, and we probably, as Christians, we don't do enough of calling people to account. It's not that we don't love them. I mean, not that we don't have compassion. We don't, like I said, people don't despise someone who steals to satisfy himself. We see this all day, not all day, but especially back not too long ago. You had all these people raiding all these places to get food and stuff like that, and the grocery stores weren't even bothering to try to catch anybody. And if they did, they got in big trouble with the media or the general public. Oh man, don't you have any compassion on these people? Well, bottom line is those people, even though they were stealing maybe to feed themselves, that was wrong, and they needed to do something about it. And I personally never said a word. I mean, I didn't know anybody that was doing that, but I didn't do very much to try to propagate the message that no, that's not right. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. They have to pay it back if they do. Sure, you can work to get them a job or whatever, that kind of stuff, but they have to pay it back. So why does he say that here? Why does he put that in the middle? Well, I kind of put it out to the side there. Solomon uses the lesser sin of stealing, and I say lesser, sin is sin, but in our thinking, it's less of a sin to steal to provide food for your family than it is to commit adultery. But he uses this lesser sin to satisfy hunger, to show the gravity of adultery. And even somebody that does an understandable sin still has to pay for it. What about somebody that commits adultery? Is there any good logical reason? Do you do that to support your family? What reason would you have for committing adultery? There's only one, and that is to satisfy your own sexual hunger, I guess you would say, for lack of a better term. And that's not a noble rule. God gives, God's law provides for satisfying that hunger, and it's not by taking your neighbor's wife or your neighbor's husband. And so if a person that does a understandable sin has to pay for it, what about the person that doesn't does a sin that's not justifiable whatsoever? As good as or worse is going to happen to them. And so that's why he puts that in there. Even though it kind of seems out of place, it does show uh, he's emphasizing the point that you got to pay. Even you can justify all you want. You know, anybody that ever commits adultery, has an affair, will justify it to himself or to anybody else, but you still have to pay. And in their case, the price of adultery was what? Death, stoning. And with that in mind, let's look at the next. Well, yeah, we'll just go to verse 32 because it's the next page that has something I want to talk about along that line. But verse 32, he says, whoever commits adultery with a woman lacks understanding. He who does so destroys his own soul. And that word for soul always has more than one meaning. It can mean your soul as we think of it, the part that goes to heaven, that lives for eternity. But it also just means life, his own life, or his own self. You certainly are destroying your soul as far as your relationship with God, but you're also just destroying your own life. You're messing things up, and things are it may be a fleeting pleasure, but it always comes back and ruins things for the life that you're trying to live. And he says in verse 33, wounds and dishonor he will get, and his reproach will not be wiped away. You can't get away with it. It's not going to happen. You can commit that sin, but it's never totally going to go away. And you have to live with it the rest of your life. And he's trying to encourage Solomon. That's not something that you want to get involved with. You can't get away with it. It's just going to ruin your life. It's going to hurt you. So stay away from it. Okay, so then the next verse, he says, and here's why. Why? Because jealousy is a husband's fury. Therefore, he will not spare in the day of vengeance. He will accept no recompense, nor will he be appeased, though you give him many gifts. So, couple things involved with this. What's the penalty under the old law for adultery? Yeah. Death for the man or for the woman? For both of them. Both of them. So how does this husband's fury business come in there? It says he will not spare the day of vengeance. He will accept no recompense, nor will he be appeased, though you give him a lot of gifts. How can you even apply that? The husband didn't have any choice. When a person's found in adultery, the husband didn't have choice. Can anybody think of a way that this fits in here? How about this? Two people commit adultery. The husband walks in on them. He knows that if he reports it, what's going to happen to his wife? She's going to get killed. What's going to happen to the guy she's with? He's going to get killed too. Is he going to be pretty happy that the guy is going to get killed? Yeah. What about his wife? So how's he going to protect his wife? By just not talking about it. And so he has that option. It's not the way the law is written, but he has that option. And the guy that has got caught in adultery with a man's wife, he may say, "Hey, I got a Porsche in the garage. I'll give it to you. Just don't report it." Or, I'll give you, whatever, many gifts, all these things that he's talking about here. the husband, if he's angry enough and doesn't, how many people that have we known, a husband that have murdered their wife because they walked in on her with somebody else? Sometimes the husband is angry enough with his wife that, okay, you're both going, well, please, I'll give you my pork. No, sorry, you're going to get stoned. How about if I throw in my house and all these gifts? No, you're going to pay for what you just did. That's how powerful adultery is in bringing consequences on a person, I guess you would say. He says it right there. Jealousy is a husband's fury. Jealousy is really big. I don't know, practically every TV show, especially the sitcom, not the sitcom, but the daytime stories that you have, there's constantly jealousy and stuff going on, people getting even and all that kind of stuff. And jealousy is a very powerful thing. And Rehoboam, you better know that. I don't care if you're the king's son or not. It was the king's son exempt from the law against adultery? No, he wasn't. And so if this happens, that husband can make sure that you get stoned to death. So a very strong lesson there. Any comments now, Barbara?
It's interesting that the Pharisees, when they brought the woman to Jesus and, said she'd been caught in adultery, how they thought they would get away with not bringing the man.
Yeah, that just shows their dishonesty, their inconsistency. They were just trying to trap Jesus. And who do you feel sorriest for when it comes? Here's a man, here's a woman. Who are you going to feel sorriest for typically? Oh, you're always going to feel sorriest for the woman. So they bring the woman. And if he's gonna condemn the woman, that's going to be a lot harder than condemning a man. Maybe it shouldn't be that way, but that's the way it is. But it just shows their dishonesty in that. There is a lesson there. You brought up Jesus and under the new covenant. By the time Jesus was walking the earth, their application of the law was pretty sporadic. They did it whenever it was convenient for them, but they didn't always have to do it. And Jesus said, well, okay, we're supposed to stone this woman. So whoever is guiltless, you throw the first stone. And they all walked away. But Jesus didn't commit a sin by saying, I'm not going to condemn you. When he says, I'm not going to condemn you, what did he mean? Okay, condemned to death, the physical earthly death. Was he saying, you're not going to have to answer for this? What did he say next?
Say, go and sin no more.
Yeah, go and sin no more. So he's not excusing the sin. He says by saying don't sin anymore, he's saying you just sinned. He's not excusing, saying no, you didn't sin, it's okay. He just says go and don't do that anymore. And so some people have difficulty with that part of it. Well, he's not keeping the law. Well, that's where his grace comes in. He has he had the authority on earth to forgive sin. And so that's how we wait a minute, that's not how the law goes. Well, I couldn't do that. I couldn't say, you don't have to pay. Jesus could, because he had that authority to do it. Any other comments?
The religious leader that Jesus gave out and before, they did have their hearts. They never missed a chance to go get them.
When it was convenient for them, yeah. they, especially the Pharisees, you know, they were the letter of the law people, and they would do that. But if it push came to shove, and their daughter was caught in adultery, you can rest assured that they would rationalize it away somehow. We don't have any examples of that, but that's their nature. Okay, so next chapter then, chapter 7. He says, "My son, keep my words and treasure my commands within you. Keep my commands and live, and my law as the apple of your eye." Both these verses I've been referencing Hebrew parallelism, where he says the same thing twice, just in a little different way. Keep my words. That's one way of saying it. Treasure my commands. That's another way of saying it. Keep my commands and live, and my law is the apple of your eye. Yes. What translation do you have?
Oh, I'm sorry. I have Ecclesiastes. We don't have to.
You don't have 7? Well, I think I just happened to have chapter 7. I got chapter 8 too. You might as well get down to your own concept, chapter 8. Yes.
Sorry. Actually, it turned out to be good.
Yeah, I'm glad you said something. I forgot I got them all ready, so I wouldn't be embarrassed like I have been for the last several chapters and not having it there. I just forgot that I had stuck them underneath here. And okay, so now that you all have a place to write some notes, he says, "My son, keep my words, treasure my commands within you." Hebrew parallelism, saying the same thing twice. Keep my commands and live, and my law as the apple of your eye. What does it mean, keeping it as the apple of your eye? You can just set it there, Gene.
Well, apple of your eye is a saying, you know, it's the most wonderful thing to have.
Okay, it's like your own little treasure. And so he says, just make my law something that you treasure, that you look on with with just with good feelings, like when you look at an apple. Whoever looks at an apple and thinks, "Oh," you know, when even if you're not that big on eating apples, they're pretty to look at. So that's what he's talking about. But he says, then bind them on your fingers. It's like they might have a signet ring that had a message on it. Write them on a tablet of your heart. In other words, memorize stuff, memorize things that I say. Say to wisdom, "You're my sister," and call understanding your nearest kin. So he's just saying wisdom and understanding. He's been talking about that over and over all through the first 6 chapters. Wisdom and understanding. Treat them like family. Sue?
Well, I think write them on the tablet of your heart is like memorizing them, but it's also live it. It's in your heart. You're gonna live what's in your heart.
Right.
If your heart
Yeah.
is evil, you're gonna live.
And that's a good point, because the heart is the center of action. It's what determines what's in your heart, determines how you live. And so that is a good point. Barb?
On verse 2, why does he say, keep my commands? Why didn't he say, keep God's commands?
That I presume it's just because he's teaching, he knows in his mind, Solomon knows in his mind that he's teaching God's will. And all throughout Proverbs, he keeps saying, listen to my teaching, listen to my, learn from me. Solomon had the gift of being the most wise person that ever lived. So if you're going to listen to anybody, it should be Solomon and his wisdom. I think that's probably why he does it, is just simply because he knows his teaching is, is right from God and is wisdom. That's the only thing I can think of. If anybody can think of a better idea, be sure and bring it up. But anyway, in verse after he says, treat wisdom and understanding just like your family. Now, suppose you have a near kin that you don't like, you can't stand it. So, well, I hate that guy, so therefore I hate wisdom. Is that what he's saying? No. Remember, Proverbs are things that are generally true. Generally, we love our family. We'd like to get together and do stuff, and we wouldn't do anything to hurt any of our family members. We want to do things to help and to associate with them and such like. So that's the way we're supposed to take this. You can think up all kind of arguments. Well, if I treat wisdom like I treat my sister, that's everything in the Proverbs you have to take in the way that it's intended to. I guess that's true with the whole Bible, but a lot of things that he says, you can think of, well, no, that's not true. I know somebody that hates his sister or hates his brother, hates his nearest kin. Therefore, that makes Proverbs all bunk. No, these are general truths. So he says then in verse 5, that they may keep you from the immoral woman. So you're supposed to take wisdom and understanding close to you. Treat them like a sister or a near kin. Treat them like the apple of your eye. Take them into your heart. Why would you do that? And here's why in verse 5. In order that they may keep you from the immoral woman, from the seductress who flatters with her words. If you have wisdom and understanding close to your heart, like Sue was talking about, and you treat them like a sister or a near kin, they're going to keep you from falling victim to the immoral woman who flatters with her words. Now, this idea of a woman flattering with her words, we also already saw last time, batting the eyes, decorating themselves up, make themselves smell pretty and all that kind of stuff. This is all kinds of stuff that a guy could do. They're not gonna. I don't know too many guys that bat their eyes, but there are things that the guys do to flirt, and that's what he's talking about is flirting. And this immoral woman it seems insatiable in that respect. She's gonna use all her feminine powers to try to lure someone in to commit adultery with her. And so you want to make sure you keep wisdom and understanding close to your heart so that doesn't happen. Then in the next verse 6, and here's why. Here's why I'm saying that this woman flatters with her words. He says, I'm going to show you an example. Here's an example for you. Here's why. At the window of my house, I looked through my lattice and saw among the simple, I perceived among the youths a young man devoid of understanding, passing along the street near her corner, and he took the path to her house. In the twilight, in the evening, in the black and dark night, there a woman met him with the attire of a harlot, and a crafty heart. She was loud and rebellious, and her feet would not stay at home. We'll talk about these. I'm just going to read the rest of it for right now. At times she was outside, at times she was in the open square, lurking at every corner. So she caught him and kissed him, and with an impudent face she said to him, I have peace offerings with me. Today I have paid my vows. So I came out to meet you, diligently to seek your face, and I have found you. I have spread my bed with tapestry, colored coverings of Egyptian linen. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh and aloes. Come, let us take our fill of love until the morning. Let us delight ourselves with the love. For my husband's not at home. He's gone on a long journey, and he has taken a bag of money with him and will come home on the appointed day. With her enticing speech, she caused him to yield. With her flattering lips, she seduced him. Immediately he went after her, as the ox goes to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stocks, till an arrow struck his liver. As a bird hastens to the snare, he did not know it would cost his life. Now, therefore, listen to me, my children. Pay attention to the words of my mouth. Do not let your heart turn aside to her ways, nor do not stray into her paths. For she does not cast down many wounded, and all who were slain by her were strong men. And her house is the way to hell, descending to the chambers of death. So that's a long little story that he puts there. It doesn't paint a happy picture, does it? It's hard to even read. So we're just going to take these statements, kind of look at them as we go along. But what's the general idea of the whole thing?
Don't fall for it.
You get involved with that stuff, and it just ends up going totally awry. It just ends up bad. But when he says, he starts off by saying in verse 6, at the window of my house, I looked down through my lattice and I saw among the simple. So I'm at the window of my house, I'm looking through the lattice and I see this happen. As I was reading this, it occurred to me, I could just see Rehoboam saying, well, Dad, what are you doing spying out the lattice of your window? You know, what's the purpose of a lattice for anyway? It's privacy. You put a lattice up so you can grow a vine, but there's always ways to see through. And here's Solomon saying, using himself as an example, saying, here I'm standing at my window and I'm seeing this guy. And then he talks about him. Well, first of all, he describes the guy, a youth, a man devoid of understanding. So somebody that hasn't learned, doesn't have the understanding that he's been harping over for this whole first 6 chapters. But the simple person just means somebody with not a lot of common sense. Anyway, I saw among those youths this guy that devoid of understanding passing along the street near her corner. So, and why would he be looking down at her corner?
That's where she lives.
That's that. How does he even know it's her corner? You know, those questions come up. I can just see Rehoboam saying, well, Dad, how do you know that that's where that woman lives? You know, well, I'm not even going to try to answer that question, but it's just something that came up to my mind. I mean, when I was in college, I lived on University Avenue, right, 43rd and University Way, right smack in the middle of the U district, the main drag through the U, and I lived above I think it was a place to buy tobacco and stuff. But anyway, I lived in an apartment above it, and you could just sit in the window and look down and see all kinds of stuff happening. Some of the stuff that you saw happening, you didn't really want to see happening, most of it involving drugs and things like that. But you would see all kinds of stuff happening, and you could be sitting there innocently in the window and see stuff. Well, that same thing could be true with Solomon, or yeah, with Solomon sitting looking out his window, just seeing what's going on around town. And you sit there often enough, you're going to see things happen that you wouldn't necessarily approve of. And but anyway, I just thought it was interesting that he unabashedly describes sitting there spying out his lattice. Anyway, the point that he's making is that, well, before I go to that, is as the son listens, it says, saw him passing near her corner, took the path to the house in the twilight, in the evening, in the black of the dark night. Does that happen in 5 minutes? That means Solomon's sitting there watching for a long time. And so anyway, the bottom line though is this kid gets caught up by this woman's enticement. A woman, verse 10, meeting him with the attire of a harlot and a crafty heart. Sue?
This reminds me of David. Staring from the rooftop at Bathsheba and just, but I shouldn't I, boy, she's beautiful. Boy, I sure want to, and he went into the night. He did.
Right. Yes, that's in our eyeball.
Solomon is the result of it.
Yeah.
So he
may be bringing that to mind, how he came into this world. And we don't know, the Bible doesn't tell us anything, but why on earth is a woman bathing on her rooftop when there's a wall up there that people walk around on? I wonder what her motives were for doing that. I mean, to bathe on the rooftop.
I think you could blame Bathsheba. It's her house. She can do with it what she wants. He is.
Well, yeah,
He is overstepping his grounds just by staring at her. You cannot blame this on Bathsheba. It's her house. She can do what she wants.
Well, within reason, I mean.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying she
there
went out there.
enticing him,
She would. I don't think that was her intent.
but that's a possibility that she
Well,
was.
Yeah, I mean,
If
I-
one in a million guys are actually looking up at a rooftop.
well, he's not looking up at the rooftop, he's looking down from his wall. So I think, a person has a little bit of responsibility, just like you wouldn't go out and hose yourself off with no clothes on out in your backyard. Well, it's my backyard, I can do whatever I want, No, that wouldn't be right. None of us would agree that that was right. And she has a right to take a bath in her own home, but does she have to do it in a way that people can see?
She thinks it's dark. It's night.
Well, you think well, it doesn't say anything about the light, but it had to be light enough for him to see, or it wouldn't have been enticing. So either she had candles going or whatever, but we're getting way off track.
I think it frustrates me, but he's talking to men. He's saying, don't do these things. And yet you're kind of saying, she set him up. She didn't set him up.
Well, I didn't say that. I'm just, well, she might. I'm just saying.
We don't know.
Yeah. We do not know. We can't say one way or the other about that. Well, okay. So anyway, things to think about along those lines, but here in verse 10 it says, this woman met him in the attire of a harlot. So what does a harlot wear?
Revealing things.
Okay, so the purpose of attire is twofold. One, to cover yourself up. The other one is to be attractive. I mean, we do that. Even now, we do it. Even us who are not immoral people, women not harlots, you still dress to look nice, right? But if you want to entice somebody, then that's when your clothing starts to change. The skirts that go down to your ankles start rising up. The skirts that go down to your knees start rising up. In our day and age, it is absolutely ridiculous. If David or Solomon, if Solomon saw at the beach what you go to any beach today, California, Florida, Hawaii, you're going to see Solomon would have had a heart attack. if he saw what is out there today, and these are people that you would say, well, they're not heartless. Well, you look like a duck, you know, there's that thing. Yeah. So, and you listen to the talk, the speech today. I mean, our morality today is, I don't know what for sure it was like in Solomon's day, but I suspect we're way far down the road compared to Solomon's day as far as what the typical woman might wear to the beach, or uh, we have a responsibility to speak up, to talk when we have a chance, instead of letting that stuff go by. You know, trying to watch the Olympic Games, and what happens? You watch the, you know, I don't care what's a running race, high jump, broad jump, uh, gymnastics, any of that stuff, and the clothing that people wear is ridiculous, both men and women. And we sit there and still watch it. And I mean, I'm not saying we all do, but I'm just saying as a general public, people do. And don't even think twice about it. And if they did, it's probably thinking things that they shouldn't be thinking. But I'm reading into people's mind. I don't want to do that. But we do have a responsibility as Christians to try to not just live the example, but to help people to see the example and point out, yeah, this is not the way God would have things to be. All right, well, without going through any further, our time's up. So if you don't have any more comments or questions, we'll close class. Anybody have anything? If not, thank you guys for your attendance, and we'll be back together for a worship service in 15 minutes.